Sewell, you have been so gracious with your time and interviews about your experience with Christianity Magazine and evangelism in the South and around the world, and that really helped in the writing of this book on Ed Harrell. And so I'm grateful for that. I wonder if you have any other reflections on what maybe younger generations might learn from the study and understanding of Ed Harrell's life.
Well, a statement of the Apostle Paul, 1 Corinthians 15, has had a deep impression on my heart in the last few months and years, especially, but months, I'd say. By the grace of God, I am what I am. And by the grace of God, Ed Harrell had a remarkable intellect and a remarkable sense of humor. And those two things, I think, really stand out when you think about Ed. But Paul went on to say the grace of God to him was not in vain. And how we use those gifts that God gives us through no choice of our own is makes what we really are. Uh, our choice is to put into effect the teaching of the Lord and the example of Jesus, and makes all the difference in the world and in our lives. And Ed had many good qualities. One of the things that always impressed me about Ed was his independence. Uh, and I've thought of the fact that he says he didn't depend on churches for support. He was not that concerned about what people thought about him or what people thought about his thinking and his views of things. If he had been, he wouldn't have been the independent scholar that he was among very liberal people. He was a very conservative kind of scholar, and of course that features in some of his messages that he's pursuing his own course, and that was typical of Ed. Uh, Another thing that always impressed me was that he was not impressed with uh, with degrees. Uh, he was impressed with sincerity and honesty in the common man. Uh, preachers, preachers who were simply had a degree, uh, he almost disdained if that was their only claim to character. Uh, on the other hand, men who hadn't even finished high school were highly admired by Ed if he found that they were sincere and independent in their dependence on the Lord, rather than on the brotherhood opinion, their standing, their status in the brotherhood. And those are some things that really impressed me with Ed. Uh, Seemed like I had another thought, uh, uh, but those are the main things that I think uh, we can take with us from the life of Ed Harrell. Ed was a blessing to me. We disagreed, and that's another thing you might mention. We disagreed on some things, but he knew I had reached my conclusions independently and with some degree of experience behind it, and he had reached his, and he was willing to let the Lord judge the value of our. And the fact is that probably both our views contributed something to accomplish the will of the Lord, but sometimes that's the way it is. We disagree about how to go about it, but sometimes it gets done, and that may be the Lord's greatest concern, although he is concerned about what our approaches and their methods, of course.